Hello and welcome to my VirtualBox walkthrough. My name is Dennis. What is VirtualBox? VirtualBox is virtualization software that allows you to create virtual machines. So what are virtual machines? Virtual machines are basically virtual or software replacements for physical machines. So instead of having a rack full of PCs, like 15, 20 different PCs, all doing types of server jobs, you can actually have one PC that has better specs that does the job of all 15 or 15, 20 or however many VMs you want to set up. Another good use for virtual machine is to try out new operating systems without actually putting them in production, or if you wanted to set up a temporary OS so you can surf the internet in a safe way. If something infects, like a virus tries to infect a virtual machine, no big deal. Just delete the virtual machine, set up another one. It does not affect the host OS at all. Now to get started, we're going to go ahead and use VirtualBox, but there's plenty of other virtual machine software out there. It's just one I use because it's open source and it's cross-platform. Now to go there, you just go to www.virtualbox.org, and this is what the website looks like, so you can kind of avoid some phishing attempts, and click on the downloads link. Now you go ahead and click on the one that's most appropriate to your operating system. Now in the case of the Linux host, you can go ahead and download the tarball, or if you have Ubuntu, you can actually go into the software repository and go ahead and install it that way. It's a little bit easier to install that way than through this method if you're not used to using Linux. Now while you're here, I do suggest you download the VirtualBox extension pack located right here under all supported platforms. Now there's a reason for that I'm going to get into later. After you download it, go ahead and install it, and this is what it looks like when you first start it up. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and install that extension pack that you just downloaded. So go ahead and click on File, go to Preferences, click on Extensions, and then click on this button to actually add it. It'll open up a file browser. You can see here. Go ahead and select the extension pack and install it and follow the prompts, and then click on OK. First thing we're going to do is going to create a virtual machine for a Xubuntu desktop. So go ahead and click on New. As you can see here, it comes with Windows and XP as default, but as soon as we type in a distribution it knows about, like Xubuntu, as you can see it automatically picks up it's a Linux and that it's Ubuntu base. Now if you use just a generic name like this and type in X, either 64 or 32, it'll automatically pick up the version, but you can manually override any of these by just clicking the appropriate drop down. Now the minimum amount of memory that distribution needs is automatically filled in for you, but I'm going to go ahead and assign it about 4 gigs of RAM. Go ahead and assign a virtual hard drive. Now you have plenty of choices here. I do suggest you keep the one for VDI. The reason being is if you use any of these others and you want to resize your hard drive at a later date, the virtual hard drive as it were, you actually have to convert from any of these to a VDI, resize the VDI, and then convert back any of these. By using a VDI straight off the bat like this, you don't have to do any kind of conversions. Here we're going to go ahead and use dynamically allocated for this demo, but you can use fixed size if you're using a server because it's often faster, as you can see here. Now this is what the distribution tends to use, about 8 gigs. This slider will move based on the distribution you're trying to install. So for something like Windows, it's probably going to move it here for 2 gigs, but we're just going to go ahead and take the default. So you can see a new item popped up here. We're just going to tweak it a bit, so go ahead and click on Settings. Now under Advanced, under General, since we just installed the extensions, we're going to go ahead and set bidirectional for both of these, for shared clipboard and drag and drop. Now the shared clipboard is what allows you to copy stuff from your host system into the virtual machine, so you don't have to manually type things out. Same thing with the drag and drop. You can click on any file or folder and just drop it into your to the virtual machine, so you don't have to set up anything kind of weird. For the description here, you can type in whatever you want. Now both of these are only the funny thing about this is you can actually select them, but they won't take effect until you install the extensions that I told you to download. That's one of the major reasons you use it, but the major reason you actually use the extensions is so you can resize your guest OS to full screen. That's its its primary function, but it has other sub functions that you can see here. Now go and click on System. We're going to take off floppy because I don't know of anyone that really needs it. Since I have a higher end system, I'm going to go to enable PAE. That allows the virtual machines to use your physical hardware so it runs a little faster. Now, if you're trying to run a server instead of a desktop, I do suggest you change your execution cap here based on what your server will be doing. Since it's a desktop distribution we're using, we're going to leave it at 100, but if you're using something like Samba for file servers, I suggest you drop that down to around 40. Or whatever the green range is over here, because it's not going to be sitting there constantly spinning out files all the time. Most of the time for like a file server, it's just going to sit there waiting for a request. So you want to drop that execution cap. And that execution cap basically allows you to assign how much of your processor power is allowed per virtual machine. Now, since we're using a desktop distribution, I'm going to go ahead and 2 cores instead of the full 6 that I have. And again, this is for hardware virtualization. This is for optimization if you wanted to your virtual machine to run a little faster. We're going to go on display. Now, since I have plenty of memory, I'm going to go ahead and move that up to 128. There's no real reason to, but I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Now, under remote display here, it's up to you if you want to enable it. This is for if you wanted to log into that virtual machine from another physical PC somewhere else. So typically you probably use tight VNC or remote RDP if you're using Linux or anything like that. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to leave that disabled. Now under storage, I don't really prefer IDE, so I'm going to take that off. Leave the SATA controller. Now here's the hard drive that we set up earlier. If you want to add another hard drive, go ahead and select Add Hard Disk here, but we're going to go ahead and add a CD-ROM or DVD-ROM. Leave it empty. Now here is now you can choose whatever you wanted there, but here I'm just leaving it empty for just so I can explain some options. If you click on this little disk icon here, you can use your host drive. So if you have a DVD, Blu-ray drive in your system, you can install your OS through this if you'd like. But since we downloaded an ISO earlier, instead of burning a CD just to put it into the host drive to download to install your OS, you can just use the plain ISO. So we're going to go and choose Virtual DVD disk file and select the ISO that we downloaded. Now for audio, we're going to leave that enabled. Now for network, NAT is just fine for desktop distributions if you're just surfing the internet and stuff like that. But if you're using a server, you would actually want the bridged adapter. That allows this virtual machine to get an IP address from the same network that your host is on. That'll make things a lot easier. Otherwise, if you left it on NAT for the server, you have to do a lot of port forwarding on the in VirtualBox itself. So any request that comes on the host actually get forwarded to the virtual machine. That's a lot more complication needs to actually happen. Now, under the advanced section, you can assign it any card you want. You can also assign it any MAC ID you want. It's totally up to you. Now, for the serial ports, it's up to you if you wanted to use that if you have older hardware. Under USB, it's kind of odd that these are always checked, but these things won't actually do anything again until you install the extension pack. So by installing the extension pack right off the bat, you save quite a bit of a headache. Now, shared folders, if you want to share any of these folders here on the desktop or on your physical machine with the virtual machine, this is where you would do it. Go ahead and click on OK. Now we're going to go ahead and start it up. If you wanted to boot off of alternate media, press F12, as you can see there. Now this Windows resize is based on what the guest OS is doing at the moment, but we can't run it at full screen at the moment. The reason for that being is that you actually have to go into devices and install guest editions, and you can't actually do that until the OS is up and running first. In this case, we're going to go ahead and install it. Doing a quick check. We're not going to select any of the other stuff because it's just a demo. Again, same thing. We'll take the default. Now this won't actually delete your entire hard drive. This is the hard drive that this OS thinks it has virtually through that file that we created earlier. Now we did click on install. I guess not. Go ahead and click on install. It's pretty good about detecting what country you're in and general region, so we're just going to take our default because that's where I'm in that region. Again, take the default for the keyboard. Now just go ahead and fill in the stuff here. You can give it your computer any name you want. We're just going to go ahead and give it the name Stonewall. Again, this is a demo, so I'm not too concerned about security because this virtual machine will be destroyed after this demo. And the installation process begins. In the meantime, let's go ahead and go through the other options. As you can see here under machine, you can again look at the settings screen. You can reset the server or the machine, like if you press the reset button. Same thing with the shutdown or close. Most of the time I can't get the ACPI to work. I just click on close and it gives me the option to just power off the machine. So either way. And if you wanted to pause it right at this second so you can go, let's say go to the bathroom or something, and then come right back to installing, go ahead and click on the pause. Here, if you actually go to full screen, it won't go to full screen. It'll just give you like a black bar thing. I'll show you here in a second. As you can see, that's not full screen. Now the reason that's not full screen is because the Get Additions here is not installed yet. This just kind of scales the screen to look like it's full screen. If you have a OS that's not, you can't install the Guest Editions on. I don't really recommend it. Here is if you wanted to get access to another drive or something while it's installing, which is kind of a weird thing. If you have anything plugged into the USB ports like these, you can go ahead and click on these to give it access to the virtual machine. And here, after the OS is done installing, we'll go ahead and go in here to install the Guest Editions. The Guest Editions is what actually lets you resize the virtual machine. Now at this point, since this is probably going to take a little while to install, I'm going to go ahead and pause this video for a second while the OS gets done installing. Okay, as you can see, the installation is now complete, so we're just going to go ahead and click on Restart Now to restart the virtual machine. Actual time passes closer to like 5 minutes or so. In the meantime, while we're waiting for this thing to reboot, just to look at the icons here, this is just to indicate activity levels. So here you have your hard drive, here you have the DVD, CD-ROM. If you have anything plugged into the USB ports that you selected up here under the USB devices, this is network activity, this is the shared folders, and this is for virtual machine specific extensions basically. The host key here is what allows you to do certain things. So like if you go under view, is the host key, which is in this case the right control plus F to go into full screen. Now for some reason or another it's taking forever, so I'm going to go ahead and force a reset. And I think the CD might be still in there, maybe not. We'll find out here. So far, it looks like the CD. Yeah, it's the CD. So we're going to go ahead and close this out and power off the machine. Just like doing a hard reset. Again, I'm just going to go into settings, under storage, and looks like the CD's not in there, so it's kind of weird. Restart it. Just a little troubleshooting you had to do on the spot. Okay, it looks like it's actually starting up now. Go and select your account and log in. I apologize how this virtual machine's acting right now. It does look like it's a little slow and choppy, and that's because I'm recording a video at the moment, so it's the same hard drive doing this, two different things at the same time. I'm pretty sure I put in my password right. As you can see, this is the Ubuntu system that we just installed. Let's go ahead and go on the internet just to show that we are in a different live system. Do a Google search and it takes you right to the home page for the first item. Go ahead and close that. Now we're going to go ahead and install guest editions. Not sure if it installed correctly, probably not. Okay, sorry about that. I had to do a quick reboot of the system so it would detect the CD. That usually when you click on devices and install guest editions, it pops the CD in the drive. But for some reason or another, the virtual machine didn't pick that up until I did a reboot. And I just to do that, I just went under my username and click on log out and select the reboot option. Now we're going to go and open this up. And I believe it's this one we run. Of course, they have to run it as root. So we're going to go ahead and open up a terminal. I believe this might be under media. Yep, apparently it is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do sudo /Rebootbox. Oh, you're going to do that to me, huh? You're going to force me to run, type out the whole thing. Oh, it's under mine, that's why. Okay. Okay, it's not so good for the video, so I'm just going to go ahead and pause this for a second. Okay, sorry about that. We're going and continue here. Just had to figure out how to get the command to run again. As you can see, under this top line here, this is what you actually have to type out. Then the script is actually executing. Now, this is dependent on your specific kernel, so when you do the upgrade, I believe you have to do this one more time. Now under here, under view, as you can see, auto resize guest display and seamless mode are both disabled. That's because we're still waiting on the guest editions to actually get installed. Now under Windows, it's a lot easier. You just click on install guest editions and you're pretty much almost done. It takes care of that for you. But under Linux, you have to finagle it a bit. As you can see, it says it's done. You probably have to reboot the OS. So let's go ahead and do that now. Yep, according to that, you have to restart it. So we're just going to go ahead and do the restart. That's what I did earlier. Now, as you can see from my Windows background here, this is definitely a Windows system. But here in a second, when it fully boots up, you should be able to go into full screen mode and kind of start messing with people. As you can see, that's much larger than it was before. I swear, do I have trouble typing in my own password? Now the view has these enabled. Now we're going to go ahead and go to full screen. And now you have a full screen. It looks like you're running the actual OS. Now, and the thing is about running a virtual machine is this will always be here. So you can always, at the bottom. So if you want, you could do this if you're not used to using the host keys. And you have the full, Xubuntu stuff. And this is pretty much where we're going to go ahead and end this tutorial, because at this point it's just a normal OS that you can use. What you can use this specific instance for is that we can go ahead and start surfing the internet through the virtual OS like this, as we demoed earlier. Let's say if we want to go to Facebook or something. We can surf not really anonymously, because it's just like a normal another physical machine, but in this case it's a virtual machine. Now this allows you to actually surf the internet in a more safer way, because if something tries to infect your system through a pop-up, through a virus, or if you're checking your email, it's no big deal, because it never actually touches your real machine type thing, so you're kind of safe that way. If you wanted to, if you're not sure about going to a specific website and you want to be a little safe about it, set up a virtual machine, go to the website, see what it's going to do to you. If it does do something, then you know not to do it with the real machine. But if it doesn't do anything, then you know it's kind of safe to go there with the real machine. So that's just one use you could use it for safe surfing. What we typically use it for, in this case, we're going to go and shut this down. In this case, I have a pre-hardened server set up. As you can see here, what this one does is that I have a base that I can clone multiple times. So if I wanted to set up another file server, another web server, or anything else like that, I just use this one. I reset the MAC address and certain things like that. It saves me a lot of work from doing that for multiple machines. On this machine, it looks like I only have 3, but I actually have a lot more than that, depending on what machine I'm sitting at. Now, that pretty much ends this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.